To me, there is nothing like real food from a family kitchen where not just are we using whole ingredients that I know this was picked yesterday, like how fresh can you get? Welcome to Scofield Farm. Today we are going to harvest some of our cabbage. Well, all of our cabbage. Look how pretty that is. And we're going to make sauerkraut. We'll actually make sauerkraut tomorrow, but for you it'll be the same video. But I'm so excited. The whole reason I even grow cabbage is for sauerkraut, and I have the best sauerkraut recipe I cannot wait to share with you. These didn't make the big cylindrical heads I was hoping, but they're usable enough. We can use a lot of the leaves. And over here, these are absolutely beautiful. They aren't tight heads, but they definitely are heads. And so we will take advantage of that. That one is trying to open back up. That's why we just got to do it. It was like 107 today. This is way past their prime, but they waited. So we waited, and we're going to take them out today. First sunflower of the season. It's so pretty. All right, so that one doesn't have like a nice head, but it's got a lot of leaves, and we can for sure use some of those. The inner ones are usually more tender. Ooh, I want to see that one. That's probably our prettiest one. This one's not quite as tight, but not too bad. It's gonna give a lot of room in here to these peppers that are tiny because they were crowded. Oh, don't get the irrigation. That's a teeny one. There's 3 in here, but be careful of the pepper plants. There's some pepper plants in between. They're sure pretty though. Yay, yay for late cabbage. Want to pull the last one out of there? Yay! All right, this is going to be some yummy sauerkraut soon. Look at that pile.
Okay, why don't you all carry some?
Wow, look at you. They should be like bouquets. Oh, pretty little bouquet. Okay, get some more. Get some more.
This is a lot.
You can't carry more.
Very heavy.
I think your sister's got a lot over there.
I think Daddy has to hold this one.
Okay, maybe he does. Get the other ones. That one's pretty.
Yeah. That's why I got this one.
It is. I like this variety. We should grow this variety again. The last remaining.
Oh, Dad, I can carry another. Can you carry more?
Hi, welcome back. We are the next day, and we're actually going to make the sauerkraut. And I am so excited to have you with me because this is my family's favorite sauerkraut recipe. It is so simple. I've made a few other videos of how I ferment different things. We have a video on fermenting garlic scapes. We have some videos on fermenting different hot sauces. And we really like ferments. Oh, I have a video about fermenting our own dill pickles. So this is actually one of the ways I got started fermenting. I did sauerkraut before I did pickles or any of the others. It was something I was really excited about because sauerkraut is so good for you. And I had actually never had sauerkraut before. I made it myself. And I actually spent like 6 months researching the best ways to ferment sauerkraut without having mold issues or spoilage or exploding jars. I researched it so thoroughly that I told my husband one day, I sure hope that I like sauerkraut because I had actually never tasted it before. But good news was I did like sauerkraut. And I spent the next couple years not only making sauerkraut myself, but buying different craft jars of sauerkraut at farmers markets to taste the different types of flavor combos that people like to make. And I wanted to find what flavor combination I liked the best and that my family enjoyed the best. And so the one you're gonna see today is the one that we have settled on as our very favorite. There's lots of good ways to make sauerkraut. We've even made kimchi before, which is like a Korean sauerkraut. It's a fermented cabbage with lots of good spices and extra vegetables. But this is the one that is my go-to if I have cabbage from the garden, or if I have cabbage that I buy at the store. If I'm going to only make one type of sauerkraut, this is the type. And I keep saying this is the type. The type is I do apple, ginger. It is so good, trust me, it is amazing. And it's awesome because this recipe only has 4 ingredients. It has cabbages, ginger, apples, and salt. That is it. It is so simple, it is so delicious, and really the probiotics that you're making in the fermentation process are so good for your body. I could do a whole video about the benefits of fermentation and probiotics, but there's not time for that today. Let me just say that so much of your health is related to the health of your gut, and probiotics are like the good guy bacterias that go and fight the bad guy bacterias that we all have in our bodies all the time. We have different amounts of bad guy bacterias even if we don't get sick. So it's good to be consuming the probiotics, the good guy bacterias, to help balance so many parts of our whole body, and all of that starts in our gut and taking care of our gut health. We are going to do sauerkraut today, and it's very simple. There's lots of ways you can do sauerkraut. There's lots of ways to ferment. My very favorite way of fermenting is using what they call Fido glass jars. They're Italian old-fashioned clamp jars. They have a clamp, you see right here. Very easy to close. They have a rubber gasket. You can take them off and wash them. You can actually take the whole thing apart and wash it. You'll see a little bit of rust on this bottom part. That is just from when I've done ferments. Sometimes I get them a little too full and they will bubble over, because the neat thing about Fido glass jars is this rubber gasket allows the jar to burp itself while it's fermenting. This is a no hassle, no babysitting your ferments method of making sauerkraut. So I do not have to go and open a jar and burp my sauerkraut every day. I can actually do this whole recipe, put it up in one of the cupboards. I like to put it up high, put it in a dark place. I like to put it on like a little plate. If I do have it a little over full and it bubbles over, it will catch any drips, and it's very no hassle. It keeps all the good stuff in, it keeps all the bad stuff out. In the air, there's naturally different bacterias and contaminants floating around. That's just normal. And so every time you burp a ferment jar, you're actually increasing the risk of contamination in your fermented product. If you have it closed, like with the Fido jars, you're not introducing room air back into that jar. It's only letting the carbon dioxide out with a little rubber gasket, and it burps it, so you're not gonna have this explode on you. I think I was trying to figure out, I think it's 14 years of fermenting in Fido jars. I have never had one explosion, ever. With all my ferments, nothing's exploded, and I do not get spoilage either, because it's keeping the fermentation process, which protects against spoilage, all inside without introducing anything from the outside. So I have 7 kids. It is helpful for me to not have to babysit a ferment. I hate babysitting stuff. I've got too much going on. You probably have too much going on too. So I recommend these. I don't have an affiliate link, nothing. All I can say is these have been around for hundreds of years. Lots of European countries have done their fermentation this way. And you can actually buy them used at garage sales, thrift stores, TJ Maxx, Target, Walmart, all the places. I'm sure you can buy them online, lots of places. And even if they're old, you can buy replacement rubber gaskets. And so you can take an old jar and you can renew it by getting a new rubber gasket. And these things can last you, you know, your entire adult life. You can pass them down to your kids. They're really great. Unless you drop them on a tile floor, then they break. But these are my way of doing ferments. So we are gonna get started with the actual recipe. You saw us harvest the cabbage in the garden. It's awesome to grow our own cabbage. It doesn't always work. We live in Northern California, Zone 9B, and our temperatures in the winter are kind of erratic. So sometimes, about half the time, our cabbages bolt. It's too hot to grow them here in the summer. The fact that I had some ready in June to harvest is unusual because I plant them in the fall, I overwinter them, and usually if we're gonna get a cabbage harvest, it's gonna be in the spring. But we got this a little late. They're not perfect heads. You can see a lot of them are kind of loose, but they are usable. So I'm going to use what we can to make our favorite type of sauerkraut. My girls are gonna help me. It's really simple. I like to have my kids help me with different things on our homestead, in our kitchen, out in the garden, working with the chickens, even working with the bees, because I feel like they get so much experience to keep with them forever that these are things they're gonna grow up, it's just gonna be normal for them to do. Where some of this, you know, me, you, we've had to learn as adults, they're already gonna know how to do it. So one of my daughters already helped me cut up the apples. We have the apples cut. We're going to have everything go through my food processor. I have some knobs of ginger. I like to do about a thumb size or a tablespoon of ginger per head of cabbage. These are a little unusual heads of cabbage since they're not actually whole tight heads. I'm gonna just kind of fudge the ratios a little bit. And that's kind of how I cook is I can tell you what I do, but when you do it, you're gonna have to do it to your taste because I like to cook, I like to make food based on the flavors and ratios that I personally like. So my recipe says I do about an apple, which those obviously can vary in size, and a knob of ginger, which would be about a tablespoon, and about a tablespoon of salt to each head of cabbage. Now, even heads of cabbage can vary a lot. You can have a little tiny head of cabbage, you can have like a big old head of cabbage. It's really tight and has tons of layers. So actually, I want to tell you the ratio of salt that you should use for fermenting cabbage. The general rule is to use about a 2% salt ratio. And all that means is if you weigh the cabbage, every pound of cabbage is going to weigh 454 grams if you converted the pound to grams. And you're gonna want to have about 9 grams of salt to each pound of cabbage if you weighed it. Now, I don't do that. I pretty much think, okay, head of cabbage is about 1 tablespoon. If it is a really large head of cabbage, I might increase that to 2 to 3 tablespoons, just depending on it. You also want to do it based on how salty you want your sauerkraut to be. Here's something else I learned. The longer that you ferment, the less salty the end product tastes. So I like to do a really long ferment. I usually will ferment my sauerkraut 2 to 6 weeks. I have been known to forget it, and it has been more like 8 weeks. Now, as I said, because of the fermentation process, it is totally safe up there. It has already multiplied enough good bacteria to not have bad bacteria grow. All that's gonna happen by forgetting it in the cupboard is for it to maybe get a little more sour and a little less salty. So I know people who've said, yeah, I've made my own sauerkraut. I did the salt, I took it out. It was so salty, it was unpalatable to me. And it probably means that they fermented it a shorter amount of time, and maybe the recipe they were using had a larger ratio of, you know, the salt to cabbage. So if you want to be really exact and you're one of those people who like to weigh and measure everything just right, I would say making a 2% salt ratio, and you can weigh it by grams, you can weigh your shredded cabbage, you can weigh your salt. That is the ideal ratio for making sauerkraut. So we're going to take these different cabbages. My daughters are going to help me put them through the food processor. We'll kind of intermingle some ginger, some apples. I have so much cabbage down here that we're gonna have to do a couple different batches in the food processor. So I'll kind of do the apples and the ginger kind of intermingled so it gets more balanced out as we process them in jars. There won't be one jar with like tons and tons of ginger and no apples and vice versa. So my daughter is going to put in cabbage leaves, and I'll just cut the head of cabbage to size so that it actually fits in the food processor. This won't actually engage to work unless it is the right amount. And then you push the button. There we go. Turn it off. And I do it shredded. You can actually thinly slice these and have a chunkier sauerkraut. But this is one way that I like to do it. I think it's easy when I'm doing tons and tons of cabbage like over there. I mean, there's bowls full. This just goes faster and it makes it like, it's just a lot more shredded. It makes it a lot littler pieces. Sometimes I've chopped some pieces to also go with it to mix in, but that's when I'm not feeling like I just want to get it done. So some of these didn't shred all the way. It might be because they were outer leaves. That's okay. I might actually just thinly chop them. Like I said, you could do the whole thing this way. I like to shred it because it's faster, but this way I'll just mix some of this in with the shredded, and then we'll have a little bit different textures and sizes. And I like to have a little thing for extras to give to our chickens. We don't like to waste anything around here, so everything that's extra goes in the compost or it goes to the chickens. And that way we don't have any waste. All right, we're just gonna get going, and then I will tell you the next step. Okay. All right, put that in compost. So, oh, another thing I wanted to mention, if you want to keep a couple outer leaves for the very end, we are going to actually hold down all of the shredded stuff, tuck it down with a leaf so it doesn't float. So this I'm going to set aside for later. I'm going to set a couple of those aside. Maybe we'll do a different head of them too. Okay, let's cut it so it'll fit in there. Oh, some of these got some nice tender leaves on the inside. They were sure trying to make nice heads, weren't they? Okay, you want to somehow stuff that in there, and then you can push it down. Real quick, would you mind hitting the like button for me while you watch this video? That helps YouTube show other people who are also interested in our kind of content, our videos, and that helps spread the word and love of fermenting and homesteading. Thank you so much. I'd also love to have you follow along and hit the subscribe button and the bell so you are alerted about future videos. And push it down. Good. Well, we got a lot to do. Don't worry, we have a lot to do. We're definitely gonna have some in there. Okay, some of these outer leaves will go to the chickens. So I want to also mention, be sure, and if you're using a food processor, use the slicer. I have done the shredder, like for shredded cheese before. It doesn't work as well. This is a better way to do it, and it's more similar to actually slicing it with a knife right there. Oops, can you get that apple?
Just apples?
So I forgot that when I do the apples and ginger, I actually like to use this attachment that's more like shredding cheese. So they end up being more like slices. I would like them to be more like incorporated into the sauerkraut. So I'm just gonna cut them smaller with a knife. And then this is kind of like our first batch, and I'll show you what we do. We're gonna start doing some more batches, but I'm gonna show you actually the process for what I do next with the salt with this batch once I get the apples and ginger added to it. Okay, I'm gonna add my better chopped apples and ginger. As I said, you can do the shredder or you can just chop them to the sizes. Now, the bigger pieces of ginger you have, the bigger punches you're gonna have in your sauerkraut later. So if you do them smaller, they're more incorporated and have just like a little spice here and there and not that overpowering. So this amount of sauerkraut. Now, you look at the bowl size, you look at it, I would say that is about, I would do 2 tablespoons, I think, of salt in here personally. If it was much bigger, I would do 3. I'm gonna do 2, I feel comfortable with that. And I've got lots of batches to go, so we'll definitely have more. Let's see, get my tablespoon out. I like to use Redmond's real salt. That is what this is. Even though it's re-put into a Costco container, I actually order like 50 pounds of salt at a time, and I keep it in a food grade 5-gallon bucket out in my laundry room. That way, you know, we always have salt here. It's a staple. It's something that doesn't go bad as long as you keep pests and moisture out of it. It will last a very long time. So we have these food grade buckets we got from Missouri Standard with these gamma lids that you like screw on. They're awesome. That's how I store it. And then I refill containers about this size to have in the kitchen. All right, this next step is kind of messy, and I'm gonna have my girls work on this, or maybe I'll work on this while one of us does shredding for the next batch. What you have to do next is you actually have to get in there with your hands and knead, yes, knead as if it was dough, your cabbage, your apple, your ginger and salt mixture. You knead it for 10 minutes. So I set a timer on the oven, and you know, I had shoulder surgery in January, so my shoulder may get tired with this, which is why I have some helpers here. And as you knead it, what will happen is the cabbage actually will start to put off its juices and the liquid from it, and it will make its own brine. You don't need to add water to be a brine for sauerkraut because the cabbage will let off its own brine, and you don't need a lot of liquid for the cabbage to be submerged under while it ferments. You just need a little bit of liquid and it will do it for itself. So you basically take out all of your frustrations on the world, everything going on in life, take it out on your cabbage, take it out for 10 minutes. I've seen some recipes say to do 15 minutes, but I found 10 minutes to be adequate. So we are just going to do this next, and we're probably gonna have somebody shredding the next batch as we work on this so that it doesn't take us hours to do all the sauerkraut that we have to do. The larger pieces like this that are kind of from the stem because it was close to bolting, I'm gonna take those out. Oh no, we'll keep that in. Yeah, it's just these pieces like the stem. Hand chopping the ginger right now because I love a big punch of spice, of heat, but my kids like it more intermingled. So right here, this is kind of the ideal size that I think it should be when it's mixed in. That way it's not too huge of a bite for anybody. And you can even go smaller if you'd like it smaller than that. Okay, so this is a much bigger bowl. See how, whoops. I was gonna show you how we put the the apples through the shredder, and so they're longer pieces, not diced. I diced the ginger for this and shredded apples. It's a lot bigger bowl, not just a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna do 3 tablespoons of salt in this one because it definitely needs more salt than the other. All right, let's take it out. Sure. Where did the tablespoon go? Okay, so 3 tablespoons of salt would be just about perfect. Oh, nope, full tablespoon. You need to actually have it all the way full. That's pretty good. Okay, 1, 2, and 1 more. Try not to get the salt all over the counter. Try to keep it in the tablespoon thing. All right, there we go.
3.
I might put a tiny bit for good measure. Hers weren't quite full. There we go. All right, we're gonna need this one for 10 minutes. We have our other one needed. Let me show you what it looks like. I have it covered with a napkin so we don't have any flies or anything, but what happens is when you knead it for about 10 minutes, it reduces by about half. If you saw this bowl before, it was completely full. Now it's definitely lower. And so even letting it sit while we do the others, the salt will pull out the juices from the cabbage, and we will pack the jars in a little bit. We just want to get the rest of this cabbage processed first. Take out your frustrations on the cabbage. You can do this. It's a lot easier to get the cabbage ready when it's a nice tight head. When things either didn't form a head or started to bolt a little bit, it is a little bit more work, but I just want you to know that you can still use your cabbage even if you have to pull it early and it didn't form a head, or if you have to pull it a little late. Oh, there is a cabbage mothworm, which shows you that we are a fully organic gardening homestead. Look at that. And we're not gonna eat it. In for the chickens. In for the chickens. Even washing our cabbage, once in a while something's missed. All right, here we go. Will this fit in there? Oh, we gotta dump that one out. Making ferments can be a lot of work, but it also can be very therapeutic. And I love to know that I am supporting my health, my family's health, and we're saving a lot of money. The amount of money that it would cost to buy probiotics for a family of 9 is astronomical. I mean, imagine being on a subscription once a month. I'm sure there's some good probiotic brands out there and stuff, but to me, there is nothing like real food from a family kitchen, where not just are we using whole ingredients that I know this was picked yesterday, like how fresh can you get, but also there is the love put into it when you are making food for your family and those you love. And I feel like that's an ingredient that it's not able to actually be measured. You know, it is hard work. It's hard work to make real food, but it's work that I value because I know that it makes a difference for my family. It makes a difference for our budget. And it is using the things we grow, which I love. Now, I do want to say a word about if you can't grow the cabbage yourself, do not feel bad. Go ahead and buy that cabbage from the store. I got in my head years ago when I learned how to grow food that I had to grow it myself. And that's just not always the reality for everybody. That's not always the reality for every season of your life. If you have to buy the ingredients to make the homemade sauerkraut, to make the homemade dill pickles, do it. It's still worth it. And especially if you're buying from a local farmer or a gardening friend, you're supporting what they're doing and you're helping keep our food supplies local and more accessible and more sustainable. So don't be idealistic. I've had to learn that years ago. Like I joke to my husband that my life is a slow killing of idealism and killing of the idealist, like the end of these things that I think that I should be able to do just so, but good enough is enough. Good enough is enough. It doesn't have to be perfect, and to be able to accept that we're all in different seasons at different times, and what we're capable of might be more or less. I mean, you might not even be able in this season to make your own ferment. then I encourage you, go support the stands at your local farmer's market of the people that are making beautiful craft sauerkrauts or dill pickles or, you know, fermented carrots. Maybe they're the fermented garlic scapes like the video I just made. Support those people if they're selling extra. And maybe, you know, in the future, you will have the time and the resources to make your own. You are never going to see ideal around here. We are not an ideal family. We do not do things perfectly. We do things perfectly imperfect. That is what we're about. We have 7 kids and life is full and life is busy and life is hard. And so we do the best of what we can. And I like to encourage people that things do not have to be ideal. They do not have to be perfect for them to be worth doing. Oh, I'm already starting to feel the juices. You can see the cabbage is starting to look wet and I can feel the juices starting to come out. This is a lot. I had shoulder surgery in January, so this is about 5 months ago. And it's definitely a workout for my hands and my shoulder to knead this and squeeze it. But it is also very therapeutic. I can't tell you, sometimes when life has been tough and grinding, weeding in the garden, you know, kneading bread or sauerkraut, it just gives us that release that we need to have. Okay, I have my last bowl all kneaded. I'm kind of out of breath. I wanted to show you, look at these. I took some suckers off of my tomatoes a few days ago, put them in water. One is even blooming. They have roots. I want to pop these up and plant them. Or if I have a friend or relative that needs more tomato plants. They're mystery because I didn't label it, but they're all heirloom and this is super fun. That was a fun little experiment. I just couldn't, some of the suckers were so big, I could not bear to let them go. Okay, I'm gonna show you this last step. The last step is to put it into the jar, and then I put it up in the cupboard, in the dark, out of the way. I put a plate on it. If for some reason there was ever an explosion, up in the cupboard, it's out of the way. As I said, these rubber gasket, Fido jar, clamp jars, they eliminate the worry of the science experiment explosion and the stress of having to remember to open and burp the jar every day. Why do you have to burp a jar? Because CO2 builds up and it could explode. That's why you want something like this, rubber gasket that lets off the gases. Also, there's like really expensive kits for fermenting. You don't need them. They're not necessary. If you already bought them, that's great, you can use it. This is so much cheaper. This is so reliable. And the gaskets are replaceable for like maybe $1 a piece. They're super inexpensive. Okay, I'm going to show you what these actually look like up close. Then I'm going to fill the jars. I like to use like a wooden spoon to push it down. And then I cover the top with a full cabbage leaf that I saved from the start. And what else do you need to know? I don't like to mix these in metal. Some people have said that I've read that the metal can be reactive with the salt for fermenting. So I try to do it in glass or pottery or something else. I have stuffed it down with a fork before, but because I need to get kind of far down, I'm gonna use a long wooden spoon so I can get everything compacted into those jars. This is what the cabbage looks like before I put it in the jar. All of them have definitely reduced down in size. They're all kind of wet looking. They all, you know, look wilted and combined. So that is what you're looking for and what you want yours to look like before you pack it. Now I'm just gonna open each jar. I have 4 jars in case I need them. I don't know for sure if that's how much I need. We're just gonna fill this out together. So I'm gonna put it in here. Try very hard not to be crazy messy on my counter. I'm even kind of pushing my hand down a little bit. All right. We can fit a lot into this jar. I do think I'm gonna need all 4 jars because I think this is my biggest of the jars I have out right now, and this is not my biggest bowl. I think we can put a little bit of this one in there as well. All right, so I want to fill it. Let's see. Get it as compacted as I can. Oh, I can still fit a lot more in there. See that? Push it down good. And there's suddenly more room. I want to go about 1 inch below the jar is kind of what I'm thinking. Then I'll put the cabbage leaf on top. And as you push, you can actually feel that the cabbage did slightly make a brine. It is not crazy wet. That is okay. When I ferment some of my peppers for hot sauce, I sometimes will do them just chopped with the salt with no water, no, massaging them or anything, and they do just fine. Okay, we got a lot in there. You also want less air. You don't want to have a ton of air atop, but you don't want to have it overfilled. So it's kind of a balance of pushing it in there, making sure that you are going to be able to put this cabbage leaf on top. Okay. All right, I'm going to tuck it in. I'm going to tuck this in. There's not a lot of brine in this specific jar. It's interesting, a lot of mine will have more brine, some will have less. So if you have more brine in yours, you're basically trying to keep the chopped up cabbage below the liquid. If we get close here, you can see when I push down that there's actually green liquid that comes up. So there's definitely brine in there. It's just not a ton. Okay, close that up. This is going to be so good. So I'm going to do the same with the other jars, and then I'll show you my finished product. Okay, this is my sauerkraut. The last step is to put it up in the cupboard for 2 to 6 weeks. I have known some people take it out as early as a week. I don't recommend it. I think it might end up too salty, but I like 6 weeks the very best. You'll have to let me know in the comments below what amount of time you like best, because I know we're all different. It is truly quite amazing that cabbage can go from this to this. Growing food is awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm going to link to my dill pickle ferment recipe in case you haven't seen that one, because it is so good. I'll see you over there.